to the Global Positive Health Institute's podcast, where we talk about all things related to positive psychology, lifestyle medicine, well-being, et cetera, et cetera. And we've had some very interesting guests. And today we have one of our very own. We have Simon Matthews, who's first and foremost a dear friend, but also serves as secretary on our board of directors of the Global Positive Health Institute. And he's a psychologist by training. He's a healthcare leader coach currently, and also an adjunct lecturer at Avondale University at the Lifestyle Medicine and Health Research Center. So welcome, Simon. I'm really delighted to get into this dialogue with you.
Yeah, thanks, Liana.
And so tell us what got you into lifestyle medicine and positive psychology.
Wow. In some ways, I kind of stumbled into it. So if I go right back in my professional life, I was very, very fortunate in that when I trained as a psychologist, I was simultaneously training in Milan systemic family therapy, strategic family therapy, and solution-focused brief therapy. The solution-focused therapy in particular gave me a lens to be able to look for what was working for someone, what was working in their relationship or their family. So that was the first piece of the puzzle for me. The next piece of the puzzle was probably a little bit of professional dissatisfaction. I'd been working as a psychologist for a while, got a bit tired of it, very nearly became an airline pilot. And in the midst of all of that, the global financial crisis struck. And so, of course, pilot hiring just stopped. And by the time that all resumed, I mean, I of course had to find a way to get back to the work that I was doing and as a psychologist. But as I went back to it, I started to think differently about what I was doing. And I really started asking myself questions about why I'm sitting here in this office, in fact, the office that I'm sitting in right now, why I'm sitting here in this office talking to people about things like depression and anxiety, when I'm reading a lot of literature about the role of exercise and activity and the role of diet and so on in mood. So I went and trained as a fitness trainer and studied a bit of nutrition as well, started folding those elements into my psychological treatment work. And then woke up one day and realised I'd tumbled into what was called lifestyle medicine. And when I discovered this had a name, when I discovered lifestyle medicine was a thing, I was smitten. I was absolutely smitten, and it's been a passion since then. Of course, I'm being a psychologist and being a coach and someone who teaches coaching as well. I'm particularly interested in the behavioural changes that support good health and how we can support people to engage in new behaviours. How we can help people to cultivate their own curiosity about their health-related behaviours and so on.
Yeah, well, certainly your passion and dedication to lifestyle medicine, positive psychology, helping people be healthier and happier shows through in everything you do in the years that we've worked together. So that all makes sense.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Can we get a little personal and share how you apply it in your own life?
Yeah, of course. So what I will say that there's two things in particular that I use to frame up my everyday life. One is that idea of what is working, rather than what's not working. Another is the principle of small steps. So there's some psychological ideas that I find value in and find really help me in my own day-to-day life. If I swing the needle a little more towards positive psychology in particular, then the two things that really stand out for me every day are, first of all, gratitude. And I love to express gratitude to other people, whether that's the barista who's making my coffee, or the cashier at the fruit and vegetable store, or whatever it might be. I look for small ways to be thankful and to express that thanks to other people. And for me, that's not forced or not genuine in any way. It's a genuine expression of gratitude for that small thing that the person has done. I seek to, at the end of a day, cast my mind back across the day and think about things that have gone well, things I'm happy with, things that I'm pleased about, things that I'm thankful for, and so on. So that's a significant part of it. The other part for me is taking the time to just experience a moment of beauty, and to actively seek those things out. My front garden is just out here through my office window. I love bromeliads and I love Tillandsia plants. They're air plants that just seemingly magically grow in the air. And I make time every day just to walk out and see what's there. Notice maybe a new flower, or a new flower spike, or a new bit of growth or something like that. I do the same in the backyard where there's more plants like that. I seek out experiences of beauty that might be standing on the water's edge, just looking at the view. It might be going to an exhibition of extraordinary photography, as I did just last week, actually. The American photographer Steve McCurry, who has a travelling exhibition that was out here in Sydney. So things like that, like really seeking to have experiences of beauty and excellence in my life. I'm going to say the other thing that really drives me is connecting what I do to something bigger, something purposeful. And I really feel quite strongly about that. I love to cast what I'm doing in my mind as a contribution towards something way bigger than me, way more meaningful than I could ever be alone, but something that nevertheless makes an incremental difference, nudges things very slightly in a particular direction. But they're the things that I try to do every day.
Well, you've mentioned some really powerful ones. I mean, certainly the gratitude practice, and has been studied in positive psychology and comes up over and over again as a very powerful way to promote our well-being, and then being present in nature and appreciating the beauty of your plants, and just also taking the time to step back and see how what you do is meaningful and connected to something bigger. So those are all powerful. And so you're making the best of it. So then how do you harness it in your professional life as well?
Oh, great question. So professionally, there are two things that have always intrigued me professionally as a psychologist and as a coach. The first is what's the smallest thing that we can do that might evoke a meaningful behavioural change for another person. So I like the idea of treatment for psychological ill-being. I like the idea of interventions, and I like the idea of experiments and ideas and goals and so on. But what's the smallest thing that we can do that's going to spontaneously kick something off? The other thing that really intrigues me is simply the art of asking questions and the power of asking questions. Questions have intrigued me for more than 30 years. And in fact, probably longer than that. There's a family story in my family that my mother, my parents are both now deceased, but mum in particular used to tell this story of when I was a very small child, maybe about 3 years old. One day, apparently, my father came in to say goodnight. I was in bed. My father came in to say goodnight, and as he went out, he turned off the bedroom light. And my mother says, my mother tells the story about me saying, "Dad, where does the light go when it goes out?" And so that idea of a question that's not immediately answerable has always intrigued me. And so in my professional work, I seek to engage with people I'm working with, whether that's healthcare leaders in coaching or students when I'm teaching. I seek to engage them with questions that they probably haven't asked themselves, to evoke a curiosity, to evoke a new way of thinking about themselves, to support them to go looking for meaning or to construct meaning in a way that they haven't previously done. And that's the way that I try to bring those ideas into my professional life. So, for example, if we touched back on gratitude for a moment, I might ask someone, what's something that's occurred in the last week that you're unexpectedly grateful for? Now you have to think a little bit about that, I imagine. It's not something that immediately is in your mind. It's not like saying, what are you having for dinner or what are you doing tomorrow? It's a question that sends you on a bit of a search. So for me, that's the way that I try to harness some of this in my professional work.
It's very refreshing. And I also appreciated your talk at last fall's conference at the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, where you gave a wonderful outline of framing questions and how to think about questions. And it opened up my mind, and I think I'm appreciating questions more as a result of that. So thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah.
What are some of the other elements that you are aware of within lifestyle medicine, the field of health and well-being, positive psychology, that you're passionate, need to be disseminated where colleagues, both through the ACLM and the broader lifestyle medicine community and through the GPHI, how do we disseminate this, spread the wealth, if you will, of well-being into a positive future? And what would that, if we succeed, what would that future look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So part of that, I think, is to recognize that these things can spread by design. So we can choose to hold conferences and give lectures and teach things and so on. So we can disseminate that way, but things also disseminate organically. And in fact, the vision that I captured for my own professional life several years ago, which I still hold very close, is a vision in which there's a large body of water, a huge expanse of water, whose boundaries you can't see, and in the centre of that, a tiny vial of indigo-coloured dye. And in this visual allusion, this indigo-coloured dye is poured into the body of water. And for me, that represents me. Tiny little inconsequential vial of indigo-coloured dye. But now do the thought experiment. What happens over time? Well, over time, that dye starts moving through the water. And when enough time has passed, every molecule of water in that body gets touched by the dye in some way. And the strength of it is greatly diminished, of course. It doesn't have the same power that it has the moment it enters the water, but it's been touched in some way. It's coloured, it's influenced in some way. So I think the lesson for all of us is live this. Live what you believe, live what you teach, live these principles of lifestyle medicine in your own life, because that becomes the organic means by which these things become better known. People get curious about, oh, how come this person thinks that, or this person is always doing that, or this person thinks this way or does that, and so on. So I think there are two things. First of all, commit yourself passionately and fully and completely to teaching these things, and secondly, possibly more importantly, make them central in your own life as well, and live them out in everything that you do. So that's the first part of the question. The second part of the question was, what difference might it make? And look, for me, I come back to that idea that I shared earlier, that small differences are sufficient, and I don't. I'm quite comfortable with the idea that I can spark a small difference in myself or in someone else, and then leave the rest of it to the other extraordinary processes that go on in the world. That small difference might make only that small difference, or the small difference that's been made might be magnified by that person and become a bigger difference for someone else. So my hope is that we I don't think we're going to see some huge cataclysmic, extraordinary U-turn or change of direction in medicine or healthcare, or for that matter, anything else in daily life. I think what we're going to see is incremental change. And the key here is, don't overlook the significance of that. Don't downplay the significance of a small change. Notice it, amplify it, chase it down, do something with it. Because it's those small changes that have the capacity over time, I think, to lead us to a point where we can turn around and look back and say, oh, wow, look how far we've come.
They build those changes.
Yeah.
And I love that visual. I'm going to have that in my mind this evening. And for some of our listeners who may be somewhat new to lifestyle medicine, positive psychology, this whole field, or maybe they're not so new, but really want to delve further, just really roll up their sleeves and apply this beautiful science of lifestyle medicine and positive psychology. Any words of advice and wisdom about where they could really learn more? And
yeah, it's another great question. I mean, there's an absolute multitude of books, of course. There's a multitude of podcasts. There's a multitude of journal articles and so on. I mean, my own encouragement here is, start with wherever your own curiosity is. And if you walk into a bookstore and you see a book whose title grabs you, grab it, read it, see where it takes you, and if it takes you somewhere amazing and opens your mind to even more curiosity and more desire to learn, wonderful. If it doesn't, so be it. Pick the next thing. Pick the next thing that makes you curious and start there. Just start with wherever you are at, whoever you are, and whatever you're doing. The other thing that I would say is conferences. And it took me a while to understand the art of attending a conference. But back in the early days when I first started attending conferences, I think I attended with a sense of FOMO. And so I would try to go to every single session because I didn't want to miss anything and hear every word of every speaker. Of course, that's entirely impractical and in fact, I think misses the point of a conference. For me, the point of a conference is connection. You use that time to meet people, to learn about people, to listen to people, to be curious about people who maybe have been in this field for a long time. Maybe they're just starting out themselves. It doesn't really matter. But join with those people in a way that allows you to learn and to find out and to discover what inspires them, what excites them, what they're passionate about and focused on. I now find conferences, even though I'm fairly extreme on the introvert end of the scale, I love the company of people, and I find it absolutely exhausting. But I do love time spent at conferences because of that opportunity to just, there is so much to be curious about at a conference, so many people to meet and to learn and find out about. And for me, that's one of the greatest sources of fuel in all of this as well.
Yeah, connecting with others, being inspired by others. Hopefully, also we're inspiring others, and
exactly right.
The best part. It's the best part. Yeah,
exactly right. Without necessarily, I mean, you don't have to try and inspire someone. You just be who you are and share your own enthusiasm and curiosity, and some people will walk away on fire.
Yeah. Well, I always walk away quite energized from good conferences and good meeting, those opportunities to really network, meet new people, meet familiar faces, share in a joint passion for these topics, and support each other as we all move forward and move and advance the field forward together. So that's a lovely way for us to cap up this brief podcast. And so before we end, any last words of wisdom, anything that you would like our listeners to walk away with?
Pay attention. Pay attention. Just look at what's around you. Notice what's around you. Approach everything with a desire to be amazed about something.
Look for the positive. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Simon Matthews, for joining us in this podcast. He's also our secretary for the GPHI, and thank you to our listeners for joining us. And we hope to see you on another one of these podcasts. Please subscribe to our channel, and in the meantime, be safe, be well, and be happy. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Liana. Bye now.